Our keynote speaker, Diego Hernandez, is the most recently elected representative from Oregon's 47th district, and is currently the youngest legislator serving in the Oregon legislature. He was educated in Oregon public schools. Hernandez is a product of East Portland's David Douglas and Park Rose district. He graduated from Reynolds High School, then worked his way through college at the University of Oregon, where he received a BA in political science and ethics studies. After college, Diego received his master's in social work at Portland State University. Because of his passion for serving his community, Diego became an educator at Park Rose Middle School and high school. Diego Hernandez was the first Latino elected to the Reynolds School Board in 2013. As a school board member, Diego advocated for equity. In 2014, Diego was appointed to the Oregon's Commission on Hispanic Affairs. He served on the Planned Parenthood Advocates of Oregon Board. Diego is the former co-executive director of Momentum Alliance, which is a nonprofit he co-founded 6 years ago, which develops young civic leaders. At Momentum Alliance, Diego Hernandez worked to advance the professional, academic, and leadership success of underrepresented youth in the Portland metro area. Diego secured funding for unique programs to develop young civic leaders. Diego strengthened the work of the organization through a youth-led approach that has resulted in measurable impact in the community. Diego is a strong voice for Oregon students, families, and underrepresented youth. He is an advocate for public education in East Portland and brings that advocacy to the Oregon State Legislature. Please help me welcome our keynote speaker, Diego Hernandez.
That was a pretty good intro, no? It's like maybe I am that cool. It's like OJ, maybe I didn't do it. Some of you get that. So I'm gonna tell you my story. I'm supposed to talk about a few things, but I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My parents both immigrated from Mexico in the 80s. My mom came here when she was 20, and my dad came here when he was 17. They met through a mutual friend. They got married. They had 4 kids. They worked minimum wage jobs. My dad comes from a family of farm workers. He's been a farm worker his whole life, no type of formal education. And my mom comes from a single mom who had 9 kids and raised them in Tijuana, Mexico, in poverty. So when they met here, they had 4 kids, and then they divorced when I was really young. And I lived with my mom and my 3 other siblings growing up. And I went to 6 different elementary schools and 3 different middle schools, and then eventually stayed at one high school, and that's Reynolds High School. But the reason why I moved around so much was the reality was my mom worked minimum wage jobs. And every time she would lose a job, we would need to find one. And sometimes we would need to move to Vancouver to find one. Sometimes we need to move to the east side, to Troutdale, wherever we could find somewhere she could work is where we moved. Sometimes we would get evicted. And some of you have experienced that, where you get kicked out of your apartment because you couldn't pay rent or for whatever other reason. So that was my experience growing up. It was pretty traumatic, I would say. But at the same time, it's your typical kind of immigrant Mexicano upbringing, no? Like a lot of Mexican food, a few parties here and there. But I was somebody who struggled academically. Like I didn't do good in school. The only thing I think I was good at was maybe math. But I was that kid that failed standardized tests over and over and over again. So I was that kid who thought he was stupid academically. Don't get me wrong, like, era canijo, like I was street smart, you know? I was so, like, you know, I remember it was my 10th birthday. I'm gonna tell you this quick story. It was my 10th birthday, a tangent, it's not even in, was 10 years old. I went to Disneyland with my tia and my cousins, and we had one less ticket than we should have had, and we had no money to pay for that extra ticket. So here's what I did. I saw people exiting and getting a stamp. I went and exited, got that stamp, covered it so it stayed moist, grabbed my tia's hand, put it on my hand, and then got her in for free. 10 years old, era canijo. And then I got a free churro because I saw somebody drop it and ask that if they can get a new one because they dropped their churro. And she got a free churro, right? So I grabbed her dirty churro and went over and I said the same thing and I got a free churro. I couldn't afford it, but I got a free, anyway. So academically, I was not, smart, but I knew I was street smart. That was my upbringing. My dad has struggled with mental health. It's one of the things that still impacts. Ponle bass?
No, I'm gonna
treble.
I'm gonna get the.
Oh, you want me to?
Your face.
Okay, more light of spotlight. My dad struggles with mental health. He's been struggling for a while, and I take care of him. One of the reasons why I studied social work was to be able to understand his condition, was to be able to help him and to empathize with him and to better assist in his mental health. Sometimes it's challenging, and some of you have family members that deal with mental health. I have a sister and my 6-year-old nephew. My sister suffers from severe anxiety. Okay, I'm gonna pause right now. There's a lot of people I went to college here with that don't know my story. So I'm gonna embarrass myself. Is that okay? Because us Latinos, when you hang out with a bunch of guys, like you don't really tell the personal stuff. But I'm gonna tell you my personal stuff now. They're gonna be like, "I didn't know that, carnal." Now you know. Okay, so ended up going to Reynolds High School. It was a very segregated school. Like you had the Latinos in one side of the school, and then you had everybody else on the other side, and then you had the Russians on the other side. So it's pretty segregated when I was going through there. And I started to do well. Like I remember getting really good grades my first term for whatever reason. It's not like I planned it. And I got this little license plate that said honor roll. And I was like, oh, my mom's going to be so proud. And I give it to her. So I give it to her, and she's like, no, está muy feo para ponerlo en el carro, no? Like, what? Crushed my dreams. But anyway, I started doing well academically, and I liked it. And, in middle school, I was kind of hanging out with the wrong crowd. I got in multiple fights. I got suspended. I got expelled. I was kind of that kid when I was a freshman in high school. I got in 2 fights, and they were like, well, if you get in 1 more fight, we're going to kick you out. I was that violent kid who was always mad. And I'll tell you why I was always mad. Not only my upbringing, probably seeing your parents struggle, but when I was 10 years old, or 11 years old actually, my mom started to clean houses for a living, and I went to clean houses with her. And she was getting prepared to clean a window that was really, really high up, probably like twice as high as this one. And so I'm holding the ladder, and she's climbing up. And then by the time she almost gets up to the top, the ladder slips, and she falls right in front of my eyes. I was 11 years old. And she's knocked unconscious. You could see her broken leg. And I assumed she was dead. And that was probably one of the most traumatic experiences that I've ever experienced. And I ran up to her thinking she wasn't okay and shaking her and being like, Mom, ama, I don't know why I said it in English, Mom. It was ama. Y luego chillando, no? And eventually, I got access to a phone and called 911, and she got help. The reality of what I know now is that 11-year-old kid should have got some sort of counseling or support. But that 11-year-old kid was then driven to Mexico and left there for a whole year with somebody who was not his mom. So that was a pretty traumatic experience to on the one hand, go through that, but on the other hand, feel like I was abandoned. That made me really, really angry. And I didn't know how to communicate, right? Like we don't, los hombres, you cry, what do they say? Los hombres no lloran, right? My mom was tough. My mom didn't want to see any type of emotional, anything from me, right? no emotion. And we grew up that way. We still grow up that way. Every social norm that exists tells us that. But it's not healthy. And I'll tell you this, that and sexism is the worst toxic thing for our identity ever. Because the reality is, los hombres, us men, we're the most fragile pieces of glass ever. Think about it. Anything pisses us off. Anything makes us angry, right? That makes us really fragile. The people who don't react, especially when they feel so much emotion in a violent way, are actually strong. And we don't get to learn that. Anyway, so I'm in high school, I'm doing well academically, and my friends, my Latino friends, they're like, Diego, what are you doing? Like, I joined the after-school groups, like mock trial and FBLA. I turned into a nerd, It's funny because my mom thought I was a cholo or something. She's like, Diego, you're not coming home from school. You're probably selling drugs. Like, Mom, I'm a nerd. She still didn't believe me. But my friends would call me a white-sican because I was doing well academically. See, there's these standards that exist, these norms that exist in our culture, that education is a white thing. The idea where you can become really critically and consciously smart is a white thing doesn't make sense to me. But those norms exist, right? The internalized forms of racism and oppression exist in our society for a reason. They've been socially constructed for a reason. And that reason is so that we do not uplift and progress as a community, because there is still so much hate and racism against our communities. And back in the day when these norms were created, maybe the folks here today don't want that, but they still exist. They still built institutions and systems that exist till this day that reinforce that notion. And we reinforce it because we believe it. Like, education is not for me, right? Education is not for you. It's más para los güeros or los gringos, no? Anyway, so that's one of my experiences in high school, remembering that me doing well academically was not seen as a good thing for my identity as a Latino. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to go to college. And first generation, my mom never talked about college. My dad, doesn't even know what that means, has never set foot on a college campus. I had never set foot on a college campus. Some of you are able to do field trips, and hopefully you are, and checking out schools that you might go to. Some of you are just trying to figure that out, whether you want to go to school or not, or want to do a trade. But for me, when I was going through school, I wanted to go to college, and I didn't know how. There was nothing in my school that would tell me how to go to college. So I figured it out on my own, bumps and trial and errors. And it was tough because my mom didn't do her taxes, and you need your taxes to do your FAFSA, It's like, canijo, how am I going to figure this out? Good thing my dad did, so I used his taxes to file for FAFSA, financial aid. I had the privilege of being born in this country, so therefore I had the privilege of having documentation, not like many of my other peers who didn't have that privilege. So I wanted to take that privilege and use it. And so I applied to the University of Oregon. And so nobody told me you're supposed to apply to multiple schools, just in case, test them out and visit them, check them out. Nobody told me that. I didn't know, first generation student, I don't know. Long story short, I ended up getting accepted and into the University of Oregon. And it was the weirdest thing. I got admitted. I'm gonna do a tangent. How much time have I got? Because 5 minutes? Okay, I'm gonna do a tangent. I went, I was like, Mom, I'm moving to Eugene, 2 hours away from Portland, right? And she's like, the typical Latina mom. She's like, no, you're moving, you're staying here, you're living with me forever. So she was not happy. She actually cried a lot and was trying to convince me not to leave. It was really hard for me to leave. And so anyway, I ended up going to the University of Oregon, moving out, making my mom really sad and depressed and angry at me. But I wanted to be free. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to get my higher education on, And I get there, I'm the only Latino in most of my classes. you know, the only person of color in most of my classes. I'm like, holy shoot, this is not what I'm used to. That was culture shock, and I struggled. My first term, I almost said, screw it, I'm gonna quit. This is not for me. Luckily, I met folks in this room and other folks who are part of MECHA. And I joined MECHA, and I joined other organizations because apparently they were all hiding in some basement. That's why I could never see them, because that's where they hide us in the institutions, no? Abajo en el basement, para que no los vean. Anyway, so I went and really struggled through higher education with money, not knowing how to do credit or credits, like all these things that they don't teach you and your parents don't really know how to teach you because they've never experienced it. So it was a really struggle going through higher ed. But it's so important. You all saw the statistics of how many of us end up graduating, how many of us actually end up going, and then how many of us end up even graduating. So 5%, right? That's not acceptable, because what that means is the access to all these opportunities that exist out there that require a degree aren't being accessed by folks like us. And that means that the doors to open opportunity, to open more opportunities for others, are not being opened. So being Latino, okay, right now, you know, I'm the youngest state representative for the state of Oregon. I'm one of 2 Latinos in the House of Representatives. Teresa Alonso Leon is the other one. Her and I always team up, somos chingones. But like being a Latino in predominantly white, powerful institutions is pretty, on the one hand, unique. On the other hand, it has its own challenges. But I've always been proud of who I am, my cultural identity, and my race. I never feel like I'm lesser. I always come in confident. Sometimes, you know, I feel insecure, a little like, you know, what do people think about me? I know what they're thinking about me, probably. Assumptions of stereotypes and all these things. But I never let that show. I come off really confident, articulate, and I try to see what they're thinking and then try to deconstruct it and show them otherwise. So there's some really critical and key important issues we're talking about right now. We're talking about immigration in the state legislature with the governor. I meet with the governor every month to talk about what we can do in this state, Teresa and I and others, what we can do in this state to better prepare this state to protect our communities, everybody here. You know, like right now, those folks who are getting DUIs, doesn't matter if you go through that program, you're going to be put on that list for deportation. Domestic violence, that's a huge epidemic, particularly in our community, right? Especially with men, that is a male issue. That is our issue. The reason why there's so much domestic violence is because we don't learn how to communicate, we don't learn how to cope in a healthy way, we don't learn how to show our affection and our emotion in a way that actually helps us. And so we need to do better. So if you're undocumented, realize that those folks that are being picked up right now is because they either have a DUI or part of domestic violence. So we're still working really hard to make sure that they get to stay. I'm meeting with the public defenders to figure out ways where they can get attorneys before they even plea so that we could protect them better. And that should be happening here soon. You know, a lot of you are in high school. Raise your hand if you're in high school. That's a lot. Is there any middle schoolers here? No, that? College? College. Cool. Good luck with the ones. Good luck, everybody. Screw it. No. Échale ganas, como dicen. So hopefully, you know, Oregon has a lot of opportunity, and we're hoping to build more. The reality is, like, there's people that came before me that build pathways for me to even be here. People who fought the hard fight of civil rights, people who fought for programs in which allowed me to get a diversity scholarship to help me pay for higher education. Somebody fought for that. right? And a lot of you are going to move on. You're going to hopefully finish college or get a higher education or get a post-secondary degree or something. And hopefully a lot of you end up in leadership roles because we need you. We need you to sit on these boards, these government agencies, and we need you to push and continue to push for doors of opportunity for other people. But you do it in a conscious way where you protect those who are undocumented, where you protect our LGBTQ community, and you also protect yourselves from being sexist or misogynist. I think I'm going to end it quickly because I got 1 minute. One of the things that I am, and I'm proud to be really out loud, I'm an intersectional feminist, and I have no apologies for it. And it took me a while to get there because the way that I grew up, when I had a relationship when I was 18, 19, I was very controlling and insecure about myself. And the reason why I was jealous and all these things against my partner was because I didn't learn how to communicate well, and I didn't learn how to be a good man. And so I've learned about my mistakes, and I've learned because people have helped me learn, particularly women have helped me learn to be a better person. And now what I do is I fight for equal rights, particularly for women's rights. Not only in the work that I do with reproductive justice and Planned Parenthood, but also in the work that I do in the legislature and a lot of my policies like equal pay or family paid medical leave that really give women more of an opportunity to succeed in this society, particularly in the area of their careers. So I hope that you really take on a leadership role, but you also are very conscious that sexism and misogyny is a real thing in our society, and that you could be a part of helping making sure that we can deconstruct those things and make it progressive for everybody. Gracias a todos.